Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes. I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. Everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the man's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a Ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in '08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
The most fundamental of all civil rights is the right to vote. Governor Beshear in December, by executive order, restored the voting rights to 152,000 Kentuckians. And of that 152,000, 22,000 are in Louisville and Jefferson County. To determine if your voting rights have been restored, you can go online to the website civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov and enter the necessary information, and it will tell you whether your rights have been restored. And if they have, you can register while online. If you incur any difficulties with that site and your name does not appear or you want additional information, if you will call the number 502-782-9731, and at that number, they will be able to assist you in regards to that. We have the opportunity to impact election and the voter rolls in this state. With this 152,000 registered and the 22,000 registered in Jefferson County, we can have real impact on our election. So I ask that you encourage your relatives, if they're ex-offenders, to go to this site. If they're friends that you know, encourage to go to them site. We need to get the word out to as many individuals as we can, because in the end, elections have consequences and we can impact those consequences.
If I could do one thing, I'd make sure that there were more textbooks in schools. I'm a teacher. I've seen the need. But my girlfriend here likes to say,
don't just talk about it, be about it.
and we're about the 2020 census.
Because when everyone gets counted on the census, it helps inform public funding in our neighborhood for the next 10 years.
So don't just talk about it.
Be about it.
Complete the census online, by phone, or by mail. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov.
In America, we all count, no matter where we call home, how we worship, or who we love. And the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Because this is the count that informs where hundreds of billions in funding will go each year for things like education, healthcare, and programs that touch us all. Complete the census online, by phone, or by mail. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov.
Talk about doing some good in our hood. Earlier this week, Metro Louisville's Office of Resilience and Community Service hosted the Metro March for Meals for Our City Seniors. The office has set up different pickup locations across the city, and St. Stephen is proud to be on that list. Seniors 60 years and older were provided with a frozen meal, a welcomed blessing during this uncertain time. Meals may be picked up between 10 and 12 at one of the 6 rolling locations across the city. St. Stephen will continue to participate in this initiative every Monday between 10 and 12.
Hello, I'm Dewan Means.
And I'm Jordan Means, and we're the owners of Buying Means Fitness. And we just want to encourage you to be as healthy as you can be right now and for the rest of your life. We know that the coronavirus impacts those with compromised immune systems or those with underlying health conditions more. And so those include things like hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease, things that disproportionately impact the Black community. And so we need to do what we can do right now and for the rest of our lives to be in control of the things that we're able to control.
And that's right. That's the biggest thing. Control what you can control. So we have to be proactive. The number one way we can do that is that we eat healthier and that we exercise. So get out, walk, do some activities with your family while you're at home right now. And then also, let's talk about nutrition with your kids. What should we eat? What should we shop for? Fruits, vegetables, more whole foods. So a healthy body is what we want right now, but we have to start by doing our part.
And these are things that you can carry on with you, not just now, but into the future, because that's the only way we're going to get healthy and stay healthy, is if we do these things as a part of our regular life.
That's right. That's right. So we just want to encourage you guys to stay healthy, keep pushing, and thank you all. We love you.
COVID-19 is a real issue, but we are serious about our fight against the virus here at St. Stephen Church. So listen as some of our staff members give you healthy tips to keep you safe during this time.
Stay healthy at home. Only leave home for essentials, such as groceries, once a week.
Please avoid crowds and gatherings. Avoid crowds of any size. This includes family visits, recreational areas, and crowded shopping.
Practice social distancing. Maintain 6 feet between you and others at all times.
Know when to seek care. Follow the Know When to Seek Care guidelines at kycov19.ky.gov.
Stay up to date through reliable sources such as kycovid19.ky.gov.
Wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. And disinfect all surfaces.
Apply for benefits. Kentucky has expanded unemployment benefits. So if you have not already done so, please go to kcc.ky.gov.
You have to do your part. You have to read. You got to pray. You have to prioritize your mental health. There's a link at the bottom of the screen. Check it out. Virtual mental health exercises, whatever you have to do to stay calm in this pandemic of COVID-19.
Do not travel. The safest place for you and others is at home. Do not travel by plane or by car.
Report non-compliance. If you see individuals or businesses not complying with COVID-19 guidelines, report to the KY Safer hotline at 1-833-KY-SAFER.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Wednesday, the 15th of April. It usually would be tax day, but I guess they rolled that back. I'm Ken Jobst, and we're here with St. Stephen Church's Generations Bible Study. So we're in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, and we're going to get right into the middle of the Word today. We have an ongoing study that's looking at 1st and 2nd Kings, and the title of the study is Faith in Power, or the Power of Faith. So we're taking a look at this political dimension that's coming from the Old Testament. Politics is basically the science of deciding how we're going to decide things. And are we going to decide things based on political power or wisdom or insight, or are we going to decide things based upon the Word of God? So this is the topic that we're delving into in 1st and 2nd Kings, and we've made it all the way up to 2nd Kings chapter 12. Now, in 2nd Kings chapter 12, we have the continuing story of Joash. Remember, Joash was made king a couple of chapters ago. He was anointed king, and as it turns out, he's had kind of a colorful go of it the last couple of chapters. We come up to chapter 12, and in verse 1 from chapter 12, you can refer to the message notes, or you can refer to your own Bible, your own scripture. But from 2 Kings chapter 12, in the 7th year of Jehu, Joash became king. Now, remember, the way this portion of the scripture works is to set the date of one king's reign in Judah. It's compared to the year of the king's reign in Israel, and vice versa. So the two kingdoms are kind of interwoven in the timeline together. You can date the reign of one king by the place in the reign of the other king when that king was crowned. So in the 7th year of Jehu, from verse 1, Joash became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. 40 years. That, we elect a president for 4 years. Here we have Joash as being king for 40 years. Now, there were other kings who were king for 40 years. And as a matter of fact, 40 is a number that's used in the Bible a lot of different ways. It's used as a number that describes testing. For example, Jesus, 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. the rainfall from the flood in the book of Genesis, 40 days, 40 nights. But these 40s, as we see, King David was king for 40 years, King Solomon, king for 40 years, King Saul was king for 40 years. That 40 years describes something of a political generation. Now, personal generations were basically a 25-year span would be a generation. But in the term of the life of the nation, 40 years was seen as a generation of leadership. So here we have here we have Joash, king in Judah, and Joash is king for 40 years. He became king in the 7th year of Jehu's reign. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba, which is all the way south. It's basically the southernmost point of Judah. Now, verse 2 contains the key to this entire study. And let's get verse 2. Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years Jehoiada the priest instructed him. So he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years in which Jehoiada, who was the priest, instructed him. That's going to become very important here before we get out of this chapter. While Jehoiada was instructing Joash, Joash did fine. But as we're going to see, Jehoiada is an old man at this point. He's high priest, but he's getting up there in years. He's going to be called home. And what's going to happen when you're on your own? What's going to happen when there's not somebody else to give you guidance? What's going to happen when there's not somebody else watching over your shoulder? So Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years that Jehoiada the priest instructed him. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Now, this was verse 3. This was pretty common in the ancient Near East, and it's common in a lot of parts of the world today, where the high places, that is on the top of a hill or on the top of a mountain, would become a shrine, would be a place, and I've actually seen this, places in the mountains where, the worshipers would set up a little shrine to whatever deity that they are worshiping, and they would leave their offerings there at the high place. And it could be a mountaintop that would be hard to get to, or it could be basically just a hilltop that had a view of the surrounding area. But remember, this is in Judah. This is in the southern kingdom. This is in the kingdom where they had the temple. They could go to the temple. If they wanted to worship, the temple was there, right? But the high places were where Ashtoreth, the goddess of fertility, was worshipped. So what this is saying in verse 3 is that Joash did not remove the high places. He didn't take a bulldozer and bulldoze them down. The people continued to offer their sacrifices and to burn incense. That is, that incense would be accompanying prayers. And so the people were praying to false gods at these hilltop shrines. And the King Joash, didn't do anything to stop that. He turned a blind eye to that, let it go, even though he was close with Jehoiada, who was the priest. So we're seeing, something that's not completely, here's the word for it, it does not demonstrate integrity. Integrity means that we are all the same person all the time, that there is a consistency in our personality, a consistency in our character, and a consistency in our performance. But here we've got Joash, and he does fine as long as Jehoiada is instructing him, but there are some things that he has either turned a blind eye to just to let it slide, or he doesn't recognize that it's something that needs correction. We continue in verse 4. Joash said to the priests, collect all the money that's being brought as sacred offerings to the temple of the Lord, the money collected in the census, the money received from personal vows, and the money brought voluntarily to the temple. Let every priest receive the money from one of the treasurers, then use it to repair whatever damage is found in the temple. Takes money for ministry, right? So this is one of the early things that we see in the reign of Joash. Joash is instructing the priests to take the money that the people bring to the temple. And there are three different descriptions of the money. First of all is the money that's collected in the census. Every year there would be, the half shekel tax, which was a small amount of money that every year you need to bring that to the temple. Now, every year, age 20 was the age at which a male was considered to be an adult. So from age 20 on up, every year you brought to the temple this half shekel, and it was a little tax, but it all went to the temple. Money from personal vows, if you made a particular vow and part of that vow said that you were going to pay money to the temple, that money would go in as well as money that was just a free will offering that was coming to the temple. So those three things, the tax, the money that was associated from vows, and the money that was brought voluntarily. Then the instruction from the king, remember, this is the king instructing the priests. The king instructing the priests. We'll come back to that. He says, let every priest receive the money from the treasurers and then use it to repair whatever damage is found in the temple. Sounds like a good plan. If you're going to come up with a plan that has, a building fund, building maintenance and repair plan to take care of that deferred maintenance, well, it's good to have a plan to know where the money's going to come from. So Joash has got that figured out, right? He understands here's where the money's going to come from. Verse 6. But in the 23rd year of King Joash, the priests still had not repaired the temple. Whoa. Now, the way this reads, it really does make it look like 23 years went by and nobody did anything. So that's one way to read this text. I'm really reading it from a little different perspective, that it may well not have been 23 whole years, but a sufficient time went by that after the king's suggestion, the king comes around the temple and he notices, you know what? Wow, this place still isn't fixed up. What's wrong with you guys? What's the problem? In the 23rd year of King Joash, the priests still had not repaired the temple. Therefore, King Joash summoned Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and asked them, why aren't you repairing the damage that's been done to the temple? Take no more money for your treasurers, but hand it over for repairing the temple. Right? He's setting a priority. Don't go on like, where's the money been going? The money's been coming in, but where's it been going? It says, look, take no more money from your treasurers, but hand it over for the repairing of the temple. The priests agreed that they would not collect any more money from the people and that they would not repair the temple themselves. That is, that they're not going to be the ones, to actually do the repair work. They were going to go out and get somebody who actually knew what they were doing. I'm a priest. I'm not a stonemason. How do I know what to carve? I'm a priest. I'm not a plumber. How am I going to fix all this? So they handed the job over to the people who had the experience and the knowledge to get the job done. So that's a positive step right there. Now let's pause just a moment. How is it that, yipes, how is it that the temple is in such disrepair anyway? What's up with that? What's going on? Well, we see from verse 3 once again that a lot of the people were worshiping Ashtoreth. They were out and, Ashtoreth worship, there was a little shrine built on whatever hilltop, and there were multiple places around the country where that could take place. And so it was maybe more convenient to worship Ashtoreth. So they would go and make their offerings on the high places. And then remember Queen Athaliah, right? Queen Athaliah was not a churchgoer. She was not one to show up in the temple. What we're finding here is that the temple had suffered many, many years of neglect. The temple had suffered, decades of neglect. And so there were things that needed to be fixed up. Some commentaries say that, well, there were walls falling down in the temple, and the temple was going with no care, with no repairs to it. So we do have to credit Joash with at least this, that he's got his heart in the right place when it comes to repairing the temple. And he's even telling Jehoiada the priest, he's saying, hey, come on, guys, it's been 23 years. Get on this thing. Let's see what we can do. Now, remember, it took a long time to do this kind of work. This is not the kind of thing that you pick up the phone and then they come in over a weekend and hit it hard and fast and it's all done. This is the kind of stuff that it's going to take a good long time to get finished. These are big stones. There's a lot of work to be done. Now, in verse 9, Jehoiada the priest took a chest and he bored a hole in its lid. He placed it beside the altar on the right side as one enters the temple of the Lord. The priest who guarded the entrance put into the chest all the money that was brought to the temple of the Lord. Now, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Because what we have here is when the people are coming to worship, right? What do they come to the temple for? They come to the temple to make an offering. And so they're making an offering where? At the altar. So this would be a chest with a hole bored in the lid, and we're going to put the chest on the right side of the altar. So you come to make your offering, a lamb or turtle dove or whatever the offering is going to be there at the altar. And then, right over here is a place for you to make your donation. So watch this. This is brilliant. They're making giving easy. And they're making the offering something that is integrated into a part of the worship. It's a part of the worship experience. So it's convenient, it's easy, it's visible to the people. And so that's a remarkable insight there that Jehoiada offers for us. Verse 10, whenever they saw that there was a large amount of money in the chest, the royal secretary and the high priest came, counted the money that had been brought into the temple of the Lord, and put it into bags. When the amount had been determined, they gave the money to the men appointed to supervise the work on the temple. With it, they paid those who worked on the temple of the Lord, the carpenters and the builders, the masons and the stone cutters. They purchased timber and blocks of dressed stone for the repair of the temple of the Lord, and met all the other expenses of repairing and restoring the temple. Verse 13. The money brought into the temple was not spent. Oh, okay. Let me just stop right here. If you've got a big project, and I mean just like a household project, let's say you're saving money. Maybe you're saving money for a down payment on a house. Maybe you're saving money for one purpose or another. You've got to prioritize your objective. You can't just go on business as usual. You have to be able, in order to say yes to some things, you have to be able to say no to some other things. And this is exactly what's happening in the temple. The money that was brought into the temple, says verse 13, was not spent for making silver basins, wick trimmers, Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe there are people that said, you know, to whom we have to struggle and focus to keep the main thing the main thing. There are so many little things. There are so many add-ons. There are so many ancillary things that can pull us away, that the good can be the enemy of the best. And so silver basins, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, gold and silver articles, sure, all of that's important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is restoring the temple so it can continue to be a resource for the faith community. Verse 15, they did not require an accounting from those to whom they gave the money to pay the workers, because they acted with complete honesty. And that means that they're transparent, right? I'll always remember my Uncle Roy. My Uncle Roy was a carpenter. He was a Finnish carpenter who did wonderful, wonderful stuff. He was CB in the Navy, all this kind of business. But he operated, he had his own little business. He was a carpenter. And he once told me that, you know, he had a customer and the customer hovered around him while he was doing work. And my Uncle Roy, rather than shooing the person away, said, you know what? I want my customers to come and see the way I do my work. I want my customers to see the care with which I'm going to hang this door, and to see what pains I take to make sure that all the details in this job are exactly correct. So my Uncle Roy invited people to come and watch him work. He was completely transparent with what he was doing. Well, that's another lesson that we've got here from this lesson. A lesson from the lesson. I like that. Be transparent. Let people see that you're doing what you say you're doing, right? What could be better? In terms of accountability, sometimes there are people that will go to great lengths to demonstrate accountability when all that's really required is, look, I'm going to be transparent. Here's what I do. So transparency is the second lesson from 2 Kings chapter 12. Now, verse 16, the money from the guilt offerings and sin offerings was not brought into the temple of the Lord. It belonged to the priests, right? So the priests had their cash flow over here, and that's fine. That was designed to be part of their livelihood. That's over here. That's okay. These other offerings, they're going to be channeled to keeping the main thing in restoring the temple. And that's the way it should be, right? Everybody's got a clear accounting. It's all working just fine. Now, if we could stop this chapter right here, that would be great, because we've got really Joash doing a pretty good job, right? The temple is in need of repair. It's in need of restoration. And Joash has basically set up the program in consultation with Jehoiada, the priest. They've got this thing worked out, and it looks like it's working. It looks like it's a good thing. You know what else this particular passage tells us? That there was no micromanagement of this project. That Jehoiada told, Joash, here's the way it's going to go. And we don't see a lot of micromanagement and little reports being filed and so on and so forth and second guessing. It's like, here's the job. You know what the job is to do. Get the job done. Go do it. Perfect. Great. Okay. Well, that's Joash, and, Joash doing all right. But then the chapter continues, and the chapter continues in verse 17. About this time, it says. Now, about this time means, pretty much about the same time all this repair and restoration of the temple is going on. Something else is going on too. Have you ever noticed that life doesn't stand still for us? That even though you had plans for this spring, even though there were things going on, still there's, COVID-19 comes along and disrupts the plans. Well, verse 17 says, about this time, Hazael, remember Hazael? Hazael, the king of Aram, went up and attacked Gath and captured it. Oh, well, why are we worried about Gath? Gath's a Philistine city. You know, Gath is where Goliath came from. You know, if Gath can't handle Gath, what's that a problem of the people in Judah? Well, it's a problem because Gath is a neighboring city, right? It's a problem because what's going on in Gath is a forecast of what's going to be happening in Jerusalem. It happens in Gath, and then you can set your watch by it. In a couple of weeks, it's going to happen in, Jerusalem. Reminds me of Italy and the United States with the COVID-19, right? Yeah, they're having this big plague over in Italy, but that's Gath. Maybe we don't have to worry about that. Oh, no. That's a foretaste of what we're going to be dealing with a few weeks later. Sure enough, Hazael went up and attacked Gath and captured it. That is, he's victorious. Then he turned to attack Jerusalem. Right? His army comes up, they capture Gath, the hometown of Goliath, right? So there's some tough warriors there. Captures Gath. Then turns his army, and they're looking uphill, looking to go attack Jerusalem. But Joash, king of Judah, verse 18 says, took all the sacred objects dedicated by his predecessors, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, kings of Judah, and the gifts he himself had dedicated, and all the gold found in the treasuries of the temple of the Lord and of the royal palace, right? He's taken all the gold, all the silver, all the money, everything everybody's ever saved up that has gone into the treasury of the Lord, and everything in the palace. And he sent them to Hazael, the king of Amram, who then withdrew from Jerusalem. Do you see what happened there? It's kind of like Neville Chamberlain going to talk to Hitler, right? Comes back to London, waving a piece of paper saying, we've succeeded in appeasement. There will be peace in our time. No, not so. What Joash did was that he took all the gold, all the silver, everything in the temple. Remember, he was building up the temple. So he takes all of the gold and silver articles that were in the temple, everything all of the past kings of Judah had placed in the temple, and all of the treasures in the royal palace, and sends them to Hazael, the king of Aram, king of Damascus, right? Who had just conquered Gath. It was an appeasement. He was buying off Hazael so Hazael would not attack Jerusalem. Well, cost him dearly. Cost him a lot. Verse 19 continues. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Just keep in mind that it was Joash that gave away the farm. It was Joash that gave away everything to Hazael. Right? Verse 19. As for the other events in the reign of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? His officials conspired against him and assassinated him at Beth Millo on the road down to Silla. The officials who murdered him were Jozabad, son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer. He died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. And Amaziah, his son, succeeded him as king. Now, that's, for real, that's the end of chapter 12 in 1 Kings. But it's not the whole story. There's more to be said. You know, there are parallel accounts in the Bible for certain events of importance. There are parallel accounts. And, you know, there's 4 gospels because, you know, the story of Jesus is of such importance that we were able to see it from 4 different points of view in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The events of Joash's reign have a parallel as well And that parallel comes from 2 Chronicles. I've taken the liberty, as it were, to include this passage from 2 Chronicles in our lesson for today to shed more light on what it is that Joash got involved with along the way. The story picks up in 2 Chronicles chapter 24, verse 15. Remember, Jehoiada is the chief priest. He's the high priest. Now, Jehoiada was old and full of years. Right? Now just so we remember who Jehoiada is. Remember, Jehoiada hid Joash in the temple, like saved his life. He could have been killed by Athaliah. But it was Jehoiada that said, no, I'm going to take this little kid and I'm going to save him. And I'm going to hide him out for 7 years in the temple where Athaliah can't get him. Now, so Jehoiada was old and full of years, and he died at the age of 130. 130. Well, he got Social Security for like 65 years. That's amazing. 130. I'm just kidding. He was buried with the kings in the city of David because of the good that he had done in Israel for God and his temple. This person did the right thing. Jehoiada, the high priest, did the right thing. At the end of his long life, he lives to be 130. At the end of his long life, not only is he buried in the city of David, that is, he's buried in Jerusalem, but he is buried with the kings. Like for the rest of posterity, he will be numbered among the kings. He's a priest, but he did the right thing. He's going to be remembered. Now, after the death of Jehoiada, verse 17 says, the officials of Judah came and paid homage to the king, and he listened to them. They abandoned the temple of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and worshiped Ashtoreth poles and idols. Oh, wait a minute. 2 Chronicles is saying that after the death of Jehoiada, all of these Ashtoreth shrines and worship spots on the high hills that were mentioned back here in 2 Kings 12, that started happening, that like blossomed when Jehoiada died. But the king is still the king who had learned everything from Jehoiada. Well, because of their guilt, God's anger came on Judah and Jerusalem. Although the Lord sent prophets to the people to bring them back to him, and though they testified against him, they would not listen. Excuse me. Perfectly healthy. Then the Spirit of God came on Zechariah, son of Jehoiada the priest. He stood before the people and said, this is what God says. Why do you disobey the Lord's commandments? You will not prosper because you have forsaken the Lord. He has forsaken you. But they plotted against him. And by order of the king, which king? Joash. They plotted against him. They plotted against the son of Jehoiada, who had hidden away the king and preserved his life. They plotted against Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. And by order of the king, they stoned him to death in the courtyard of the Lord's temple. King Joash did not remember the kindness Zechariah's father, Jehoiada, had shown him, but killed his son, who said as he lay dying, may the Lord see this and call you to account. At the turn of the year, now watch. They told me that you can't slice bologna so thin that it only has one side. There's a 2 Kings chapter 12 side to this thing. There's a 2 Chronicles chapter 24 side to this thing, right? It hinges on what Joash did while Jehoiada was alive and what Joash did when Jehoiada was dead. what the king did when he got guidance from a trustworthy priest, and what the king did when that trustworthy priest was no longer on the scene, when Jehoiada was no longer on the scene. Verse 23, at the turn of the year, the army of Aram marched against Joash. Now, this is exactly the same thing that's been described here in 2 Kings 12. The army of Aram marched against Joash. It invaded Judah and Jerusalem and killed all the leaders of the people. They sent all the plunder to their king in Damascus. Now, wait a minute. I thought Joash took all of the gold and silver out of the temple, and that took care of Hazael, king of Aram, and that then he withdrew. No. 2 Chronicles is saying only after he killed all the leaders in Jerusalem did Hazael go back to Aram, go back to Damascus. Something left out there. Although the Aramean army had come with only a few men, the Lord delivered into their hands a much larger army. Judah had the bigger army, right? The Aramean army was a smaller army, and God gave the army of Judah into their hands. Because Judah had forsaken the Lord, the God of their ancestors, judgment was executed on Joash because Judah had forsaken the Lord. Once again, remember that word forsaken means gave up on him, that they completely gave up on the Lord. Verse 25, when the Arameans withdrew, they left Joash severely wounded. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and they killed him in his bed. Right? Now in 2 Kings, it makes it look like these officials were, just jealous of Joash as king, or maybe they were upset that Hazael, the king of Aram, had taken away all the treasure. No. They were upset because the king double-crossed and murdered the son of his mentor. His mentor raised him up, saved his life, kept him hidden from Athaliah. And what does he get for it when he dies at age 130? That the king goes ahead and kills Jehoiada's son. Whew, that's cold. That is cold-blooded. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada the priest. They killed him in his bed. So he died and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. They buried Joash. He's in Jerusalem. He's in the city of David, but he's not buried among the kings. Wait a minute. Who's buried among the kings? Jehoiada, the priest, was buried among the kings. The priest was honored. Joash, not so much. Those who conspired against him were Zabad, verse 26 says, son of Shemith, an Ammonite woman, and Jehozabad, son of Shimrith, a Moabite woman. So there we get more insight as to who exactly is in on this. The account of his sons, the many prophecies about him, and the record of the restoration of the temple of God are written in the annotations on the book of the Kings. To my knowledge, that's the only time in the scripture that specificity is given. Usually, the things that a king did during their reign are recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah or the annals of the kings of Israel, that sort of thing. Here, the record of the restoration of the temple of God are written in the annotations on the book of the Kings. That's another way of saying that it's in the footnotes. It's somewhere, it's in the footnotes in the story of the annals of the king of Judah. Wow, all that, and he ends up a footnote in history. And Amaziah, his son, succeeded him as king. Well, what do we take away from this? What do we take away from 2 Kings chapter 12? First of all, we need to understand that we can only fully understand 2 Kings chapter 12 in the light of 2 Chronicles 24. That there's complementary points of view on King Joash. 2 Kings 12 is giving kind of the rosy scenario, is giving the good side, and 2 Chronicles chapter 24 tends to give a little bit more harsh appraisal. Now, this is interesting to me because it's kind of flip-flopped, actually. 1st and 2nd Chronicles treats David very gently and doesn't highlight things like, oh, his, that business with Bathsheba and all that kind of stuff. 1st and 2nd Chronicles goes pretty light on that. 1st and 2nd Kings says, oh, hey, look, here's the way that went with David. But on Joash, the situation is just completely reversed. Now, it's interesting to me, we've got these just 3 ideas that we got here in this particular chapter. First of all, in the 2 Kings portion here in chapter 12, we've got the repair of the temple, and we've got how the fundraising went about for the repair of the temple. And then we've got this story of the capitulation, how the king basically capitulated to Hazael's demand. And I want you to compare this to King Jehoshaphat. How am I going to do it? Well, how am I going to do that with King Jehoshaphat? Watch. Here's Joash did not call for the community to come out and fast when this situation came up. He's king. He didn't call for a community fast. He's king. He did not even call for community prayer in the face of this situation. All he did was simply pay off Hazael. And then Hazael comes in, and 2 Chronicles tells us he killed off a bunch of the leaders anyway. But then the flip side of this is Joash gets assassinated. And Joash is killed by his very own servants. And so once again, what we have here is a case of regicide, the killing of a king. Now, rough stuff. The king does not die in battle honorably. He's wounded in battle, but he does not die in battle. He's actually killed by his own associates. So the bottom line here is that Joash started off strong, started off with every advantage, had people stepping out of their way, putting their own lives at risk to make sure that he was going to be taken care of. And even though he started well, he started strong, he finished poorly. And part of the accounting the scripture gives us for his weakness at the finish was that he never took for himself the lessons that were taught to him by Jehoiada the priest. While Jehoiada was there, he was able to guide him and shepherd him through some of his decisions. But in the absence of Jehoiada, the king just went on and, for all intents and purposes, was lost. So there we have 2 Kings. This is 2 Kings chapter 12, a fascinating chapter and one that really rewards diligent study. I encourage you to take another look at it. Take a look at it in the light of 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Once again, the title of the series is Faith in Power, or the Power of Faith. It looks to me that Joash experienced the power of faith, although it was Jehoiada's faith in the beginning. But he ended up putting his own faith in power, and that didn't pay off for him very well at all. Well, my prayers are with you during this season of COVID-19. Haven't we just had some wonderful worship services? The Easter service is one that I will certainly not forget. It was a powerful message, and just the encouragement of being able to come together even though we're separated by the miles. I do appreciate your prayers. Thank you for remembering me. Thank you for remembering one another in this season of social distancing. Remember, we may be socially distant, but we're not spiritually distant. If you have questions or comments, go ahead, put them in the comment section below. Happy to respond to them. And until the next time we're able to get back together, whether it is online like here, or hopefully in a few weeks, we'll be able to resume an in-person study. I just want to let you know, love you very much. You're tremendously precious to me. I appreciate all of your encouragement and all of your well wishes. And once again, stay healthy, and you're in my prayers as we continue to study in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings. God bless you. Have a great week. Take care.